This lesson explores learning outcome 1, listening and speaking, and addresses the assessment standard to demonstrate critical awareness of language use in oral situations. Learners should be able to use styles and registers to suit purpose, audience, and context most of the time.
Humour is important. You have to be able to laugh. You have to be able to find enjoyment. And I think finding things funny and sharing that kind of emotion with someone brings you closer to that person.
A society that can laugh at itself is absolutely a healthy society. I think that's just been proven over and over and over.
If you can laugh at yourself, you show other people a way to interact with you, which is a much nicer level of interaction, a way to bring people together.
You must trust your sense of humour, and if it's funny to you, it's going to be funny to the audience members.
Hi and welcome to the last lesson in this series on humour. As you've probably realized, in this lesson, we are going to uncover some of the reasons why humour and laughter are so important for us as humans, and also why it is a vital part of a healthy society. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to discuss the importance of humour, state some contexts in which humour can be used positively, state some examples in which it would be inappropriate to use humour. Let's begin this lesson by asking a specialist why humour is so important to us as human beings. We spoke to Andy Deverell, who's a research psychologist. How important is humour in relationships?
Humour is important. You have to be able to laugh. You have to be able to find enjoyment. And I think finding things funny and sharing that kind of emotion with someone brings you closer to that person. And it becomes important not only with a romantic relationship, but it's important in friendships. It's important in relationships with teachers, in relationships with people that you're going to work with, in an office environment or a work environment. It's important with your parents. It's important with strangers that you might meet in a shopping center. It really does have a very vital role to play.
How can humour help us to take life less seriously?
You have to learn to laugh at yourself. It's not something many people do easily. But if you take yourself too seriously, you're actually setting yourself up to be hurt and taken advantage of. You know, people can be cruel. Kids can be cruel, especially in a school environment. You'll laugh at someone for something inappropriate because they may have a stutter, because of a bad haircut, because of the way they look, because of the way that their voice sounds. If you're going to take everything seriously and you're going to take it to heart, it's going to start to affect the way you think about yourself, your self-esteem. That in turn will affect the way you act towards people, and it becomes a vicious cycle. The worse you feel about yourself, the more you give off those bad vibes, and the worse people start to treat you.
How can humour help us cope with life's problems?
I think that is one of the most important ways that humour helps us cope, is dealing with stress. Stress is a fundamental part of everyone's lives. We have stress with everything we do. And the easiest way to deal with it is to learn, first of all, to acknowledge it, to say that there is stress, and then to be practical about how to cope with it. Now, humour is one of the easiest, cheapest, freely available resources to do that.
So, Andy thinks that humour is very important. Humour can help us improve relationships, feel better about ourselves, and deal with stress. Keep these points in mind while you watch these interviews with some comedians. Do they share the views of our psychologist? How important is it to be able to laugh at yourself?
I think laughing at yourself is also to have the ability to be self-critical. And you have to be self-critical. You have to look at yourself and go, you know, I was a bit of a fool in those days, but I've grown out of it. People who aren't willing to laugh at themselves are people who are not willing to learn about themselves. Laughing at yourself is learning about yourself.
Do you think a society that can laugh at itself is a healthy society?
I think a society that can laugh at itself, I wouldn't immediately say it's a healthy society. I mean, there's certain humour that is blatantly prejudiced, certain humour that is very ignorant, certain humour, it depends on the humour that they're laughing at. I mean, there's lots of humour or jokes that I listen to that I think, this isn't actually funny, this is actually totally offensive in that. So the question, I think if it's a strong, not ignorant humour, if it's an intelligent humour, humour that embraces that entire society and understands each facet of that society and people can laugh at that, then it's a healthy society. But if it's a type of humour that goes, oh, these guys are idiots, you know, and I just hate them basically, but they're saying it covertly and it's very ignorant, schoolboyish humour and that, which doesn't respect other cultures and that, and people laugh at that, I don't think that's a healthy society at all. And there is lots of that humour in the world today.
Are there any subjects that are not funny and shouldn't be joked about?
Sometimes comedy can get a bit touchy, and often people border on being really insulting or really rude. And you can often see when an audience isn't liking, you know, what you're saying, or even an individual, you know, when you're directly attacking them.
Is it difficult to find the balance between freedom of speech and respecting other people's attitudes and values?
Now, it is difficult to do that, but it's not impossible, like I said earlier. You have to go and do the research. You have to, like for example, with Chili Boy, we deal with very important issues relating to other people. And we went and we sat with Hindu people and we performed bits of the play in front of them. And we said, is this offensive to you? How does this work? What do you think of this and that? So we worked a lot. We took 3 years to develop Chili Boy. We took another 3 years to develop Hoot. It's a lot of hard work goes into there. So it is difficult, but not impossible.
Do South Africans have a healthy sense of humour?
Absolutely. South Africans do have a healthy sense of humour. One lady saw my previous show, Chili Boy, in Grahamstown a couple of years ago, and she absolutely loved it. And then she came to watch my new show, Hoot. Now, Chili Boy deals with Indian and white characters, whereas Hoot deals with black, coloured, Indian and white characters. And she said she was listening to some of the humour and she was worried whether the black guys going to be offended. But when she actually looked, the black guys were laughing the most at the jokes and that. So South Africans do have a healthy sense of humour. They do laugh a lot at themselves and that.
Do you think humour can be an agent of change for attitudes and beliefs?
Humour changes attitudes and beliefs, I think so, because I think laughing is such a physical thing and you're using all the muscles in your body and you're using your face and you know, you just really, really get into it when you really laugh and you're genuinely laughing. It's such a natural kind of thing. So if you do find something offensive, your body kind of like tells you that, I didn't really like that. So it can be used as an agent.
How can humour help us cope with life's problems?
Humour is, but not completely. It's a sense of escapism just for that while, but I guess it doesn't make you cope. It just, you still have to deal with your problems.
Well, it seems as if comedians and a research psychologist agree. Humour is important for a range of reasons, from reducing stress to seeing the funny side of life and surviving hardships. As we said right at the beginning of this series, humour is a very personal thing, and what one person finds funny is not necessarily something that everyone will find amusing. You may want to discuss the following questions in a small group. Do all people in your group find the same things amusing? Are there some things that some of you feel shouldn't be made into jokes? Now that we know how important humour is, maybe you want to know if humour is something that we can become better at. This is what some professional humorists had to say. Is a person born with a sense of humour, or is it something we can learn?
I don't think you're born with a sense of humour, and I don't think you learn a sense of humour. I think you, as a human being, relax into a sense of humour. I mean, we live in a very stressed out society where people are always going, get out of my way, you idiot! They're very stressed out. But when you just relax and take a breath and look at the world you live in and start appreciating everybody and start just observing in that, and that you relax into a sense of humor.
What are the most important things to remember when trying to be funny?
When you're telling a joke, it should be funny to you, not ideally to the audience member. You don't make up a joke for them to laugh. You tell a joke so that it'll be funny for you. Is it funny to me? And then it'll be funny to them, you know, because humor is just so personal.
What advice can you give to someone who wants to make a career out of humor?
It's not the most talented people who make it, but the most disciplined people who make it. There are many people who, at varsity, who I can tell you were much more talented than me, but none of them are working in theatre or even in TV or anything at the moment because they had no discipline at all. Whereas they would be content with what they achieved, I would go and I would work on my voice and I would work on my dancing, I'd work on my acting all the time until I became better than them.
I hope you've enjoyed this series of lessons on humor. Before we go, let's recap the main things that we have learned. Humor is subjective. Different people find different things humorous. Humor is created using certain devices such as exaggeration, satire, stereotyping, puns, spoonerisms, parody, and caricature. Often understanding a joke depends on understanding the references that are used in the joke. In a pun, for example, this means knowing the double meaning of the words. Satire requires understanding what the social or political situation is that the humor is commenting on. And parody requires that you are familiar with the original story or picture that the comedian is referring to. One of the most important things to remember about humor, though, is that there's a line between being funny and offensive. It can be very difficult to know where this line is because different people are sensitive to different things. But you should avoid saying or doing inappropriate things that can be hurtful and unkind. For today's task, watch the following clip of a comedian telling a joke. As you watch it, think about what contexts it would be appropriate to tell this joke in, and where it would not be appropriate to tell this joke.
Last week I missed the bus. I had to take a taxi. I've never felt so degraded in my life. But if I don't go to work, they'll fire me. Troy says, "No, Mom, it's okay, I'll go with you." He does this thing with his fingers. This thing stops. It looks chock-a-block to me, but no, they're going to fit me and my son in. I've got to duck down, keep my body tight, because I can feel my rubbing in people's faces as I turn round. Between these two fat ladies is this thin gap like this that I've now got to fit my behind me is this old man. And he's coughing. And he's coughing spit. And I'm thinking, oh my God, tuberculosis.
List 2 contexts where it would be appropriate to tell this joke. List 2 contexts where it would not be appropriate to tell this joke. That's all for today, and this brings us to the end of the series. Thank you for joining me. See you next time.